If you would have told me 20 years ago that I was going to end up owning a New York City acting studio, that I was going to devote my life to mastering the art of teaching and the Meisner technique, that I would spend my days mentoring, shaping, and training aspiring actors, I would have told you were fucking nuts. Not a chance in hell. But life has a way of revealing its true purpose to you if you stay open, if you say yes, if you walk through those doors that open for you in surprising moments. And today we're going to talk to one of my closest friends, the producer, the actor, the casting director, Kate Lacey Kiley. She was being groomed to take over as VP of casting at Disney Studios. She spent 9 years there. But that wasn't her passion. She was an actress, and she left that job to pursue her acting career, only to discover that what she really loved to do was produce. We're going to talk about living a creative life, of wearing different hats, of the importance of relationships, of how not to fuck up an audition. She's learned a lot along the way, and she's here to share it with you. So put the phone back in your pocket. Creating Behavior starts now. Well, hello, my fellow daydreamers. You know, this episode has had me thinking a lot about the importance of relationships. Now, I know that I've said to you guys many times, listen, you want to work in this business for a long time, you want success, you want a real shot at doing this work in your 50s or 60s, you got to train, you got to take yourself seriously, you got to do good work. Every single time, right, you walk into a room, put yourself on tape, walk into an audition, in performance, in rehearsal, on set. You've got to be a good collaborator. You've got to be somebody that other people want to actually work with. And you've got to be accountable, right? That's a given. But relationships, man, I can't fucking tell you how important they've been in my life. And if you ask any really successful person, really in any business, but absolutely in this art form, they're going to talk about the relationships that they've made. And those relationships sometimes are formed over many years. But when you have a collection of people, a handful of people who know you, who like you, who respect you, they're going to recommend you to other creative artists. They're going to open up doors for you that you didn't know were even there. And conversely, you're going to do the same for them, right? And that's what my relationship with Kate Lacey Kiley has been. I met Kate 20 years ago. We were doing our MFA showcase out in LA, my classmates and I. And at the time, she was managing the casting department for Disney Film. And she came to the showcase. And from that night of her watching my work, we've had a relationship now that's spanned 20 years. And I've watched her just transform herself into not just a casting director, but a first-rate actress, into a first-rate producer. She knows so much about this business. And, if I could give you anything of hers to watch, and I think it's a must for any actor, anybody that loves film, anybody that loves the creative process, watch the documentary Casting By. You can watch it on Amazon Prime. It came out in 2012. This was a passion project for Kate. She's going to talk about it. I jumped on board with her as an associate producer. I believed so much in her work ethic, in her passion, that I wanted to be a part of it. And it's a love letter to the casting director. She was the last intern of Marion Dartery. And if you don't know who Marion Dartery is, you should. One of the great casting directors in the history of film. She casted Urban Cowboy, Midnight Cowboy, Panic in Needle Park, Grease, The World According to Garp. She was, as a woman, carving out a trail for the thousands of casting directors behind her. She was the VP of casting at Warner Brothers for, 15 years. So Kate was her last intern before she retired. And Casting By really started as an homage to her. And the documentary really became an insight into the world of casting. This documentary has some of the biggest actors and casting directors in the business. How they work, how they do what they do, how they, put a film together. Everybody from Ellen Chenoweth to Deb Aquila, Lynn Stallmaster, who just passed away a couple of months ago, Ellen Lewis, Amanda Mackey. These are some of the best casting directors in the business. And the actors in this documentary, my God, Ed Asner, Jeff Bridges, Glenn Close, Robert De Niro, Richard Dreyfuss, Robert Duvall, Clint Eastwood, Mel Gibson, Danny Glover, Diane Lane, John Lithgow, Pacino, Bette Midler, Scorsese, Jon Voight. Hearing their insights about how they started off in this business, how they developed relationships with the casting directors that they went in front of. It's an incredible documentary, and I highly recommend it. And if you really are an actor and you're serious, you need to fucking watch it. So, on that note, I'm gonna turn it over here to my conversation with Kate. We are beginning our conversation talking about the night she first met me. Here's Kate.
When I was working, I was at the time I was still an assistant to the incredible casting director and executive Marsha Ross at the Walt Disney Company. Part of my job was to go and kind of scout talent, or just go, take in shows or see movies or whatever, and just keep an eye out for any, actors out there that we could potentially meet with. And so a part of that was going to the leagues every year, which was the master class performances from all the top acting schools. They would come out to LA. I think he would come out for like a week or so, and they would do like a couple nights of shows. It was myself, I believe, Gail Goldberg and Barbara McCarthy. And we had gone to see the Rutgers Mason Gross School of the Arts masterclass performances. And there was a performance between two young actors, male and female. And I could not take my eyes off of this young male actor. He was so charismatic and so just had this light in him. And it's one of those things where you kind of felt the energy of the performance. You know what I mean? When you see people on stage and you're just drawn to them and you feel that energy. Well, that's what I felt when I was watching this young man on stage. And so I waited and I looked in the program and I saw his name at the time was Chip Sandlan.
Yeah, you're going way back now.
I know. By the way, it took me a while to move from Chip to Charlie. I waited until, you guys all came out, and that's when I met you. And I said, I think you're incredibly talented. And I said the same to Andrea, who's the young female actress. But I said, I would love to have you guys come into Disney and meet with my boss. And, I think you're incredibly talented. And then that's when you guys came in and I had you meet with Marsha and Gail and Donna. And then after you left, I've never done this since, and I hadn't done it before, but I called every casting director, manager, or agent that I knew at that time or had a relationship with at that time to say, I really think that you should meet with this kid. He's really great, talented. And you also had this incredibly warm, genuine personality. And I think that that's so important too, just in life. But definitely in terms of me recommending an actor, I always feel like, this is potentially somebody who's either going to be hired by you or that you're going to rep. And I want that person to be a good person. That's how we met. And I think it's important too for any students that you have, or young actors who are listening to this podcast, I think it's important to understand who it is that you're learning from or listening to, and as a part of your research, what value do they have to add to that area of expertise in which you're trying to learn. And I think that it's important for them to know that you are the real deal. And I'm very big on effortless performances, and just very natural, not forced. And that's what you were really you just were the character. That was it.
I do wonder kind of like the kind of acting I would do now if I was still acting.
Well, that I told you one of these days I'm going to cast you in something I'm producing, and you will find out.
Yeah. I don't miss it, but yet, I mean, like, I still consider myself an actor, even though I'm
I think
a
one
teacher.
thing is always an actor. And I think this is, this is an interesting topic, I think, which is kind of where I'm at in my life journey now, right? And where you're at in your life journey. We both started out as actors. I was an acting major at Emerson College, studied Kristen Linklater, and I never in a million years would have said I would do anything other than acting, which I'm sure you would have done the same. It was, I will act or I will die. And so I moved out to Los Angeles, and that was what I was going to do. Well, my second day in LA, I wind up meeting for an internship with the incredible Marion Doherty, who, if no one listening to the podcast knows the name Marion Doherty, you should watch the film Casting By.
And your passion project.
That was my passion. It was my passion project and my first producing gig. But I started this internship, which led to 10-ish years of working in the casting profession, still missing acting, still wanting to go back to it. I wound up quitting my job in casting to go back to acting, and found my way into producing, which we'll get into that maybe a little bit more detail in a bit. But I think what's so interesting, and what actors out there should know, is that this industry provides so many different areas for you to find your true calling. I never would have thought I could be anything other than an actress. And the second I touched the producing profession, it was like I knew immediately, no, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I never would have known, had I not worked in casting and quit casting to go back to acting and stumble into this Casting By story that gets me into producing, that I would have known, oh, this is the area I was supposed to be in my whole life. And so same with you. I think you were destined to share the craft of acting. I believe that. And I think that had you not gone to Mason Gross and moved out to Los Angeles and pursued acting in Los Angeles, and then had this conversation with Maggie and moved back to teach, it's just, I hope that all the actors out there know that there's so many cool gigs in this industry that you might find your way into just by way of following your passion of acting. I knew I was born to entertain people. I didn't know, I always felt that it was through acting. I didn't know that it was another version of that same storytelling thing in producing, but I knew I wanted to be in that field. But I look at 99.9% of the people out there, I have family members that still in their 40s don't know what they want to be when they grow up, and so my feeling is that the only way you can really kind of know truly what it is that you want to do, know truly what it is that your calling was, is to experience it, is to go through different jobs. I am such a huge advocate of doing internships. I think that, to me, is like, that should be mandatory for every college student, anybody who wants to get into a particular field, because it gives you a taste. I was so lucky to have the job that I had. Getting a studio gig is kind of a rare deal. And so I was fully aware and appreciative of the fact that I had a studio gig. I wanted so desperately to quiet that noise in myself that kept missing acting. Every day I would wake up, I would feel like I was walking around without an arm because I missed acting so much. And it was like I had this constant battle of like, just appreciate what you have and this job and but this isn't what you were born to do. And so I finally, after doing that dance for 7-8 years, whatever it was, Marsha Ross, my boss, had come into my office. I'll never forget it. She came in and she said, I just wanted to share some good news. I just sat with the president of the studio. They were doing their department reviews, right? And she said, and I wanted you to know that we both agree that you are in the position to be groomed to eventually run this department. And she's sitting there, she's smiling, and I knew she was so happy to share that news with me and proud. And I wanted to feel that so much. I wanted to feel this like overwhelming sense of like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. This is so cool. Like, because I should have been feeling that. And instead, everything inside me was like, oh, like I felt like I was suffocating. And so I did the whole like pretend excitement and like, thank you so much. And that's so great. And that next day was a Friday. I couldn't stop thinking of one thing, an image of myself waking up at 50 years old, regretting my entire life. Because a day turns into a week, turns into a month, turns into a year, turns into 10 years like that. And I knew that if I didn't make the decision right then, I would never do it. It was a Friday. I called her and I said, I need to talk to you about something. And I asked if I could go over because I didn't want it to be in the office. So I went to her house on that Saturday and I sat down with her and I said, I want to start by telling you that I appreciate every single thing that you have given me. You've taught me so much. You have provided me with opportunity, and I don't want you to think I don't appreciate it. But this is a version of my life that I'm not supposed to be living. And there's one thing that I've felt passionate about my whole life, and it's acting. And I miss it. And I feel like if I don't at least try to do it, I will regret it for the rest of my life. And I remember her looking at me. I'll never forget. It was the definition of stoic. Okay, well, if that's what you feel you need to do, then I'm not going to stop you from doing that. I said, oh, okay. So I guess I will see you on Monday. And so I kind of went home and I was in this weird place of like, I don't even know what to do. Like, I don't know. I felt like there was no closure there. And so that Monday, she came into the office and she comes over to my office and said, okay, I processed this over the weekend and I just have a couple questions. And she said, first, I don't understand this being something that you didn't plan. I feel like, were you planning this and you just decided to tell me now? Because I don't understand how somebody would just make such a big life decision without having thought it through. And I said, I'm going to be honest with you, Marsha, I didn't. I said, this wasn't a plan. I said, this was something that when you and I had that conversation last week about my review, it really was just if I don't do this now, I will never do it and I have to do it now. And she said, okay, I understand that. And then she said, because this is such a big life decision, I want to temp your position for a period of time in case you change your mind. And that to me was one of the kindest gestures I'd ever experienced. I thought I really couldn't get over it. Like that she valued me and my work to the degree that she would hold that job, but also that she kind of was like providing me with this safety net in case I did make a mistake in this decision. I thanked her for that. And ultimately, look, I never went back. But I will say that for anybody out there who is in that kind of place where they're not happy with what they're doing and it's not easy, right? We all have to pay our bills. We all have to, but I'm telling you, making that decision started the path for the real life that I was supposed to be living. Meaning I don't feel like I fully started living my life until I left Disney. Because after that, look, I mean, I went on to, like you said, I went on and I was fortunate enough to get some good acting gigs and things. And then ultimately get to a place where I'm auditioning regularly and incredibly bored and think, hey, somebody should make a movie about my first boss, Marion Doherty. And Joanna Colbert and I, she had the same thought because she came from the same school. And we partnered up and started deciding that we could make this documentary about Marion. We hired a producer who kind of failed in that role and left the project. And just by default, I thought, well, I guess I'll have to do it. So I just jumped in and boom, here's my calling, right? So
it's an amazing documentary, and every actor needs to watch it. The collection of actors and casting directors that are interviewed in that documentary, it's a treasure trove.
I think it is an invaluable tool for actors, just to get an understanding of what that casting director's perspective is. And I think too many actors are, and look, I get it, right? I worked in casting at the top level, and I started auditioning after working in casting. Now, mind you, I'd only done theater auditioning before working in casting, but even after working in casting, I still was bombing on auditions. I still was getting nervous. So the thing that I will say that I think casting by does is it humanizes that casting director. Casting directors are just out there working hard too. They're trying to get their next gig just like you're trying to get your next gig, and we forget that this is a collaboration. This whole television, film, theater, it's a big collaboration, and it takes a lot of incredibly intelligent people to have that collaboration work. I don't like this idea where actors kind of fall in this inferior role. They're not. They're adding as much to this collaboration as the casting director, as the director, as the cinematographer, as the grip, as anybody, right? So I think they should definitely watch it.
Honestly, I think most actors end up quitting after 3, 4, 5 years because they can't take the audition process. They don't know how to audition well. They freak their shit. They can't handle rejection. They think that every audition they don't book is because they sucked.
Look, one thing I learned is you cannot seek validation from anybody else aside from yourself. I think that as actors, we instinctively want for someone to tell us we're good enough. Yes, you are the actor that you think that you are. Yes, you are good. Yes, and ultimately that validation has to come from yourself. You have to know you're good enough. I think that something that always stood out to us when I worked in casting are these actors who just had this inner comfort and confidence in what they were doing. There was no question of, am I good enough? Did I do a good enough job? Did you see me as this part? It was more, well, I'm a good actor and this is how I would wear this character, so hopefully it fits. There is only one you. So you are going to bring something special to this role that you're auditioning for that nobody else on this entire planet will be able to bring to this role. How amazing is that, right? What power that gives you as an actor to know, oh, they're not going to see this on anybody else because there's literally no other me. So let me embrace this role. Let me find this character's inner voice and show them what that looks like on me. That's what the job of an actor is. It's not a test to see if you get this part or not. It's a process of showing me, how does this character look on you? And sometimes that's a match and sometimes it's not. The second that we place that idea of, I need to get this part, the second we put the hope of needing to get that part into the audition process, you've already lost.
Yeah, everybody puts their eggs in these baskets because, oh, fuck, I haven't had an audition in 6 months, and they put everything on this audition, and you're not going to book it.
Right.
I
need this job. I need this job. I need this job. Oh, please, God, I need this job. Like,
can you smell that when an actor walks in that way?
Sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it's horrible because a lot of times those are the actors that will end their audition with, I really love this part. So like, if there's anything you need to see differently, or if I can do anything else, like, I really love this part. So like, whatever I have to do. And it's like, I come from being an actress. So I would always, of course, sympathize. And I would always try to give, if we had time, I would always try to give them another go with, especially if you knew that they, you could sense when they didn't do their best, or they knew they didn't do their best. So I try to at least give them that, so that they felt good when they left the room. But you can't come in with that desperation, because what happens at that point, right? Just like in life, when you're nervous for anything, for a job interview, for anything, you are putting something between yourself and me, right? You are putting this invisible barrier between that connection that I need to have with you in this part. And that invisible barrier is the nerves, the anxiety, the anxiousness, the desire to get it. And so I'm not really able to fully connect with you, the person, because all that stuff is around it. So I think when you're going into an audition, the most important thing to remember is there's a lot of actors out there, and only one of them is going to play this part. And so already odds might be against me. However, maybe who I am as an individual and that special thing that makes me is exactly what they need in this part. And so fingers crossed that's the case. And so let me just go show them what that looks like. And John Papsadera, a brilliant casting director, which if any of you listening don't know John Papsadera, you should look him up. When we were interviewing him for Casting By, he described it so perfectly. He said, the best casting comes from a marriage. It's a marriage of the soul of the actor and the soul of the character. That's what happens. It's just this kind of thing that matches up, and it's perfection, and that's when it works. And by the way, sometimes it doesn't, and you see those examples all the time, and generally the show or production or whatever won't succeed because of the bad casting. But when you see these roles, Joaquin and Joker and all of these, it's like perfect marriage of character to actor. And so kind of taking the pressure off of making yourself into something that maybe you're not supposed to be, and just being your authentic self. That's what's going to ultimately get you a gig.
Well, I tell my students that it's about doing good work. Like, just go in there and do good work. And you're probably not going to be right for that part, but they're not going to forget you.
I'm telling you, we never forgot a good actor. Never. And I always give the example of Amy Adams. We were bringing Amy into pre-read for things because at the time she wasn't really that known. But Amy would come in and slay anything. And even if she wasn't really right, she would be professional and courteous, and just she would never waste the opportunity of having that audition. So even if she wasn't right for a role, she made us feel thankful that we brought her in, and we would always bring her in. Like, we brought her in for things that we knew she wasn't right for, just to see if maybe we can be wrong and maybe she can fit. And, because she was just one of those actors who gave it her all and had fun doing it.
You said that she was professional. So I'm curious, like, what that means to you. You could, on both sides, the camera and everything you've done as an actor, what's it mean to be professional, in your opinion?
There's a whole group of actors who just kind of don't take the job of being an actor very seriously, in my opinion. They kind of just wing it, like they'll go on audition, like if they book it, fantastic. But there's no work ethic behind it. I think actors forget that acting is a profession, and the business of being an actor is really being an independent contractor or an independent business, and you are the CEO of that business. And I feel like there are actors, when I say professional, it's the actors that came in, had read the script, have really good questions that they were looking for answers to in order to help their performance, or offer insight, respectful of the audition space, respectful of the other actors in the waiting room. There's just a level of professionalism that you should carry with you. And in the work, I can't tell you how many times we would call actors in, and this is, again, we're at a studio working on studio level films, we'd have some pretty high level filmmakers in the room, and we would bring actors in. It would drive me crazy when you have a writer director who says, "So what'd you think of the script?" And the actor actually has the audacity to say, "Oh, you know what? I didn't get a chance to read it. But I did. I read the sides. I think it's a really good role." And I don't get that. I simply don't understand how, as an actor, and this is your business, you wouldn't put the effort in towards not just showing respect to the writer director in the room, but also informing yourself to give yourself an advantage on the story, the character's relevance in the story, the character's interactions with other characters. Like, so those are the kinds of things that separate a professional actor from someone who's just kind of hanging out.
Are there any auditions that are like seared into your memory? Like that was just one of the best auditions I've ever seen.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt, The Lookout. All day, all night.
Really?
Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I mean, first of all, he's just brilliant in anything, but he had come in. For anybody who's listening who doesn't know, there's different stages of the audition process. So first is doing a pre-read, and then you get a callback, and the callbacks are with the usually the director. In film, in television, it's with the producers and director. And those director producer callback sessions are usually with regularly working actors, but then there's a few who are offer only, right? Where they don't really have to come in because they're so well known and they're so established that you just make an offer for the role. Well, I think Joseph was kind of at that point where he didn't really have to come in for director and producers, but he did. Joseph came in, and I remember he really wanted this role. And it was one that I actually did not envision him in. It was kind of like the high school jock character. And he winds up getting into a car accident and suffers a brain injury. So it was a very rich, really layered role. And Joseph comes in, and it was myself, Marsha Ross, and Scott Frank. Joseph comes in, and he had a book that he had found on brain injury. And he said, "Scott, I just wanted to bring up this book. It really helped me in doing my research for the role and kind of preparing for today to get into character. And I really think it might be useful to have, maybe just take a look at." And he went into some of the, issues that brain injury people deal with. And it was, first of all, spot on. But second of all, I thought, look at this guy. Like, not only did he go so far as to go and get a book on brain injury to help inform him on the character for this audition, but he's also offering it to the writer-director to say, this was really useful. You might use it, you might not. But I loved everything about that. And he's such a gracious guy anyway. Well, he comes in, and it was a scene where he was kind of being manipulated by this bad guy who was essentially trying to turn him against his family and say that, they don't know what's best for you. I know what's best for you. And he has him call his dad and ask for money, ultimately knowing that his dad is going to say no because he doesn't trust him with the brain injury. But Joseph's character thinks, no, my dad trusts me. He thinks I'm independent enough. And well, he does this call, and ultimately the bad guy's right. His dad says no. He doesn't think that he should be handling that much money by himself. Simple scene. The scene ended at the end of that call. And this is a huge note for actors listening. Just because it's the end of a scene doesn't mean that you have to just be done, right? Like, finish out the scene. And that is what Joseph did, feeling his heartbreak when his dad says that he's not going to give him this money. He hangs up the phone with his dad. And again, scene's supposed to be ended there. But what he does is he's sitting there, and all of a sudden this tear just rolls down his face. And by the way, I would not suggest ever throwing anything in an audition room. But in this scene, he was sitting on the floor, and there was a chair next to him. And this tear rolls down his face. And he just gets this look in his eyes, and he goes, "Fuck!" and grabs his chair and pulls it over to the other side and kind of like throws it on the floor. And we were like frozen. It was so powerful and so emotional, and just the best, not just audition, it was like the best performance I'd ever seen, being a casting director means that you get to sit front row to some of the best performances in the world that nobody else will ever see. And that's the truth. I have been so fortunate to have the experience of working in casting and seeing actors who everybody knows take on roles that nobody else will ever see them do, that nobody else will ever know that they had the ability to execute as flawlessly as they did. And but we know that. And that's why I think, a lot of people try to, make projects without casting directors, and they really don't understand how critical that role is. We have all of that knowledge in our minds. We've seen all of these actors do all of these different things that you will never know that they could do or not do. And so I realized that in casting, what I found so fascinating was putting these puzzle pieces of a cast together, right? As a producer, you're putting all of those puzzle pieces together, all of them, how it's going to look, how it's going to feel, who's going to be in it, like all those different elements that ultimately, culminate in this final product. You as a producer are kind of responsible for putting that all together. And I just feel like it's such this amazing experience, but also responsibility to constantly challenge yourself, to want to do the best. I constantly want to make sure that what I'm executing is worthy of being executed, if that makes sense.
I think a triple threat nowadays is actor, writer, producer. And there's a lot of actors out there that they've written something and they want to do something with it. Like, what does an actor need to understand about producing if they want to create their own shit?
Here's the thing. Nobody taught me how to produce. I was fortunate enough that I was able to observe these incredible producers when I worked at Disney. But mind you, at the time, never in a million years would I ever say I wanted to be a producer. And so it's not like I was really keying in on everything that they were doing, but I observed the good producers. The tone that I set as a producer is ultimately going to be the tone of this production. And so I feel that right now, actors out there who aren't getting the auditions that they were getting because of the slowdown of COVID, who aren't getting a chance to be on set or stage, they do have the opportunity to create their own work. And I said this, look, I've been saying this for years. Actors act, make your own stuff with YouTube and all these TikToks. And there's such incredible opportunity for actors to be seen now that we've never had before. When it comes down to, well, how do they produce? Look, I didn't know what I was doing with casting by. I literally fell into this role. So I took it one day at a time. My husband always says, that saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? It's not the whole thing at once. And so that's how I think you approach it. I think that you say to yourself, okay, what is it that I want to make? And what are the elements that need to fall into place to be able to make it? And let me tackle this first element. And then let me tackle that second element. And putting it all together, what I would say is, I think there's too much of a rush to put something together because they have this really great idea and it's going to be fantastic and let's shoot it this weekend. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. I think if you have a good idea, it's worth sitting and formulating it to the best of its potential, because a good idea can become a really poor idea in execution. So for me, it's all about execution, making sure that you're paying attention to those fine details.
And you've been seeing what this pandemic has done to the business. You had so many projects in the pipeline.
Yeah.
That you were like really close to some major shit getting locked down.
Everything shifted. I mean, it first started with COVID. Everything kind of shut down, and then it was a whole reshuffling and reorganizing, and projects are getting dropped because they have to focus on how are they going to even finish making the one that they were in the middle of production on. And so that all kind of threw a wrench into everything. My producing partner is Kate Upton, and we both feel strongly that, and this has been our mission statement since we began, that the content that we put forth somehow inspires its audience and leaves the audience somehow with a message of positivity. And I think that now that we've experienced this moment of time, look, it shifted some of our projects. And yeah, we were at the 5-yard line and we're basically back to the start of, the game. But I feel like it's actually kind of really made the projects that we're taking out stronger. It's made our company, in my opinion, a better company. And so I think that, again, going back to looking for the positives and the negatives, we all have an obstacle in front of us. Okay, well, as an actor, you have obstacles in front of you every single day. How do you get around that obstacle? I never accept a no. You know this. It really is up to you to say, okay, well, this person is saying no, but this is just one person. And I believe in what I'm doing. I believe in what I have to offer. And so, how do I get it to continue moving forward, taking the feedback from the person that said no, using it creatively and constructively? But how do I get to that yes? Well, that's what I'm doing right now. That's what I think everybody should do.
When was a moment where you felt the most hopeless or despondent, where you're like, you know what, this just might be the time for me to completely bow out? Did you ever get to a point like that where you're just like, so
what is it, Wednesday?
Anxious?
I mean, listen, I'm being challenged right now. This is a rough time. Everybody in this business is being challenged, but this is the beauty of our business, is that we are so fortunate to be able to engage in this incredible storytelling process. And I, on my worst day, will still wake up being thankful that I get to be a part of it. And I've been waking up on my worst days, but I still love it so much. I still believe in the power of film and television and theater productions. I believe it's a huge responsibility to share something inspirational with the world. I believe it's a huge responsibility to provide, somebody out there who just lost their job because of COVID, the opportunity to escape for half an hour, hour and a half into a film or a television show that makes them laugh or just takes them away from the stresses of their life. I think that's a really critical, important role that we play in society. And so I will forever be thankful that I'm doing it. And as hard as it gets, I will constantly remind myself of how important it is so that I continue to be inspired.
What would you want to pass along to maybe that 19-year-old kid coming out of Emerson, or anybody listening here that is still plugging away and has a dream?
Yeah, I would say never lose sight of that dream and never lose the excitement that you feel towards pursuing it. I think it's the moment that you let in the doubt and the rejection that you're screwed. I think you just have to remind yourself of why you're doing it, why it matters to you, and why it matters to the world, and hold on to that. And whenever you're feeling the weight of rejection or dismayed, just come back to it.
Well, my fellow daydreamers, now you know my childhood nickname. Thank you for sticking around and keeping that bone in your pocket. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you have a few seconds and you can review it on iTunes, that would be fantastic. You can go to my website, creatingbehaviorpodcast.com, for the links and content to every episode. You can book me for private coaching, read my blogs. If you're interested in training with me in New York City, for more information, go to MaggieFlanaganStudio.com. You can follow me on Instagram @CreatingBehavior, @MaggieFlanaganStudio. Lawrence Trailer, thank you for the music, my man. My friends, stay open to possibility. Walk through those doors when they open. Play full out with yourself. And don't ever settle for your second best. My name is Chip Sandlan. Peace.
It's not enough.